Now, here's something interesting. Remember NAFTA, the big free trade agreement, Mexico, U.S., Canada. We're going to have these discussions. We will be having discussions, but they're going to be completely transparent. You'll hear all about what we said. Remember that earlier this year? Breaking news update, Wolf Richter from wolfstreet.com. NAFTA negotiations start in secrecy despite fake promises of transparency, and lobbying heats up. Americans don't know what's being negotiated at their expense. The first round of renegotiating the NAFTA, or North American Free Trade Agreement, between U.S., Canada, and Mexico began on Wednesday and is scheduled to last through Sunday. And the one thing we know about this is this. Despite promises in March by U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, USTR, or is that Treasury, that the negotiations would be transparent, the U.S. Treasury, or whatever U.S. they're calling USTR, now considers the documents and negotiations classified, and they'll be cloaked in secrecy. Quick look, freaking surprised. But corporate lobbyists do have access, and they're all over it. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, or EFF, put it this way. Once again, following the failed model of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, the USTR will be keeping the negotiations, this is nothing with Treasury. The USTR will be keeping the negotiation text secret. And in an actual regression from the TPP, we'll be holding no public stakeholder events alongside the first round. This may or may not set a precedent for future rounds that will rotate between the three countries every few weeks thereafter, with a scheduled end date in mid-2018. So let me just ask you this. If something like this is that damn important to keep classified, and they tried to keep it hush-hush in the first place, and let's just say America knows its days are over of ruling the world, and we got our pals north and south of us, Mexico and Canada, and we're all on the Western world, so to speak, and we see China, Russia, and all these other countries on the eastern side creating new, SWIFT banking system. They keep creating their own new ones. They're stockpiling gold and silver. They're talking about their own trade agreements, and we ain't none of us invited. And I've been covering that for a few years now. We are not invited every time. So let's just assume, okay, if we may here, that we know this is happening at the top, and it ain't going to be pretty, and we better prepare for it. That's why we need the free trade agreement. That's why we need NAFTA. We need this stuff, because it's really between ourselves fighting against these the Asian side or the Eastern world. And if we don't do this and get some things in place now, we're all going to be in trouble. But they don't dare say that, right? Because then we're going to know what the hell's coming, and you guys knew this in advance, and So they have to make it look like, oh, this just happened. Oh, no, trade war just started with China. We didn't know this was coming. Oh my gosh. Oh, but that's okay. We got these trade agreements between ourselves up here, so we're kind of okay. I mean, is it possible that might be what's happening? Yeah, I'll say it's possible. I don't know how, on a scale from 1 to 10, I don't know how high I'd go on that, but it's possible. But during his confirmation hearing in March, Lighthizer had promised to make the negotiations transparent and to listen to more stakeholders and the public. The EFF reported at the time that in response to Senator Ron Wyden question, what specific steps will you take to improve transparency in consultations with the public? And Mr. Lighthizer replied in writing, if confirmed, I will ensure that USTR follows the TPA, Trade Promotion Authority, aka Fast Track, requirements related to transparency in any potential trade agreement negotiation. I will also look forward to discussing with you ways to ensure that USTR fully understands and takes into account the views of a broad cross-section of stakeholders, including labor, environmental organizations, and public health groups during the course of any trade negotiation. My view is that we can do more in this area to ensure that as we formulate and execute our trade policy, we receive fulsome input and have a broad and vigorous dialogue with the full range of stakeholders in our country. Broad and vigorous dialogue. Have you ever, I'm asking everyone you hearing this right now, have you ever used those words in a sentence in your freaking life? to anybody. Broad and vigorous dialogue. Hi, Mr. Customer. We sell, battery backup systems. You have those? You have servers? Yeah, we do. You don't have any battery backups? No, we don't. Man, you realize you could wipe the data. The hard drive can crash if the power goes out. Well, yeah. What do you got? Well, I'd like to send you something. I'll send you some data on this. I'll send you a couple of PDFs, show you what they can do, give you a little price sheet, and see if we can work there. Okay. You send out the email. Hi, Mr. Customer. It's a pleasure to you. I'd like to open up this broad and vigorous dialogue with you about these battery backups for your new servers. Who in the hell writes this stuff? Everybody has a freaking speechwriter. It's the same political bozos that give it to everybody, no matter where you are in the chain of political la-la land. And he says, I add the emphasis. Oh, that's fine. Senator Maria Cantwell tried to have Lighthizer address the skewed trade advisory committees that currently advise the USTR by asking, do you agree that it is problematic for a select group of primarily corporate elites to have special access to shape U.S. trade proposals that are not generally available to American workers and those impacted by our flawed trade deals? And he replied, it is important that USTR's trade advisory committees represent all types of stakeholders to ensure that USTR benefits fully from a diverse set of viewpoints in considering the positions it takes in negotiations. But wait a second. You're not including the public or any other one, labor or anyone else. You're talking about the corporate elites who absolutely want the free trade agreement so that they can get cheap Mexican labor and other labor. That's the point that they want. They don't want to hire Americans. You guys cost too much. Go play with your blockchain and make a fortune. Leave us alone. Okay. He also said that he looked forward to discussing additional means for ensuring public input into U.S. trade negotiations. We want that, but it's classified now, so we can't see what happened. No, correct. And it's just stage one, by the way. We haven't even gone anywhere with it, and you already freaking classified it. Okay, that sounds good. It's like a Nancy Pelosi moment where you're going to have to wait for us to pass the legislation before you can see what's in it. Oh, no more Americans get hired anymore. Oh, that's good news in there. All of them were fake promises. The negotiations and the text are classified in secret. And unless something is leaked, Americans, along with Canadians and Mexicans, will not know what is being negotiated at their expense. However, for the Mexican population, don't worry. You guys will be working a lot cheaper than us Americans. You already have been. So you guys are on standby, ready to jump in and start working, right? You don't mind working for low wages because the situation you've been in Mexico for all your lives, this is like a step up in society for you guys. And I get it. If I was in your situation, I understand too. Okay, let me say that. But we have a standard of living in America. That's what makes this America and makes us American. We don't settle for, beans, scraps. We're hard, we can be at least hard workers, earn a good living, etc. Now, granted, you start to have the snowflake crowd and, millennial and everyone's handing them for free. I don't want to work. That's too much work. I get it. But that's not the majority of America. But lobbyists have access and they're being listened to, not you and I. One big topic is the inclusion of an investment state dispute settlement, or ISDS procedure. Investment state dispute settlement. What does that mean? This is important for big oil, as represented by the American Petroleum Institute, which said in its brief that NAFTA must include investor state dispute settlement. It's called ISDS, a neutral international arbitration procedure that is necessary to ensure that when U.S. oil and natural gas companies invest abroad, they can seek protection for their investments if they do not have access to developed and independent court systems. In other words, if we happen to go in South American countries like we've been doing and dump oil all over the place because we ain't going to do the kind of procedures we have to do in America, it costs too much money, we want to be able to make sure that this goes to arbitration and that there's no international courts or any other kind of courts involved. It just goes to arbitration. And by the way, the arbitrators or the company doing the arbitration will be from our club. But don't put that in the newsletter. Don't let anybody know that. So this also goes for Mexican and Canadian oil and gas companies that invest in the U.S., but API doesn't give a hoot about that. ISDS is an arbitration procedure outside of the national court system. Its rulings force legislators to change laws in favor of foreign corporations, and the courts are helpless. The big oil lobbying group also said this in its brief. API is not aware of any adverse decisions among the handful of ISDS cases ever brought against the U.S. U.S. companies have won or favorably settled many of the approximately 35 cases that have brought against Canada and Mexico. Adverse decision is in the eye of the beholder. Here is an ISDS case that the U.S. lost against Canada and Mexico. It whacked American consumers and reduced Congress to a rubber stamping entity. On December 2015, a World Trade Organization arbitration panel, in siding with Canadian and Mexican beef and pork producers, ruled against the U.S. country of origin labeling requirements for beef and pork, originally passed by Congress in 2002 and strengthened in 2013. After that strengthened act became effective, beef and pork products sold in the U.S. had to show where the animal was born, raised, and slaughtered. Americans finally could make decisions based on this knowledge. The labeling was very popular in the U.S. A little consumer knowledge goes a long way. But the WTO, World Trade Organization, claimed that the labeling requirements discriminated against Canadian and Mexican meat imports. And to heck with consumers, it allowed those countries to impose up to $1 billion a year in trade sanctions against the U.S. exports if those requirements were not removed. Congress buckled in no time and voted to repeal the, as it's called, the COOL law, country of original labeling, COOL. This is how ISDS operates. Consumers and workers have no seat at the table. What matters are corporate interests lined up against the rules and laws put in place by the elected governments. The ruling is a deal made between companies and an arbitration panel, and Congress then has to repeal its offending laws. ISDS provisions are an attack on national sovereignty. Big oil does not want governments to get in the way with rules and laws that might trim their profits or limit their power or curtail their freedom to operate wherever and however they see fit. So if the USTR contemplates handing over this power to some arbitration panel, the negotiations should at least be public, and the documents should be public, and the lists of lobbyists and their priorities should be public, so that outrageous portions of the agreement could elicit public outrage. And it should be public from the very beginning, not just when the final package of thousands of pages is presented to Congress, which then is under tremendous pressure to just rubber stamp the thing. But fat chance. Already, penalties imposed during the first half of 2017 on Wall Street firms by their regulators have plunged compared to the same period in 2016. The financial crisis is forgotten. Even sounds of gentle wrist slapping fade. Read, Wall Street firms win again, regulators capitulate. Which is another article, of course, from Wall Street. And I will link this. It's exactly what I said in the beginning. We want to go to arbitration, which again, this could be simply unbelievable, epic pollution, massive oil spill. You get nothing. We go to arbitration. Here's your beans. Get lost, you indigenous people in the jungle. We don't care about you. Screw you. We got money to make. So what if we've destroyed your rainforest? Piss off. And there's nothing you can do about it because your government with our government signed an agreement. And that's arbitration. Just like in order to rent the last house we had, to even get into that house, sign here. You agree with this? You agree with that? And when it comes time for your return money on deposit, whatnot, if we can't come to agreement, like we think you damaged more than you did, you want your full deposit, we're going to go to arbitration. And if you don't agree to go to arbitration, you can't even sign the lease. You don't get the house. So you're denying me my right to a trial by jury, a trial even just to go to court over this matter? Absolutely. Well, because you don't have to go find another house. Oh, I'll go find another house from another rental company who has the same contract you have. I don't want to sign that either. Well, get lost. Find somebody else. Then what? I have to sign it. I have to take arbitration. If I disagree, hey, I don't think it took, $1,000 to fix this little tiny mark in the carpet in the corner. Well, you can't cash the check yet. We're not going to send you the check yet for your refund back, your deposit back, security deposit. We're going to have to go to arbitration. What day is good for you? They know you're not going to deal with that. Just send me my damn check minus this ridiculous fee, right? That's how it goes. Now, good news is I'm getting a good amount of mine back. I know I damaged one of my kids damaged the carpet in one spot, a big old square, like 6 inches by 4 inches. Again, small area. Did it really cost $600 to fix that? I don't think so, but that's what they're taking out. Most of my deposits coming out. I'm not going to arbitration. Time is money. I'd rather sit here and do a couple of YouTube videos than screw around with that. Let me tell you something. So anyways, this, again, transparency. Obama's going to have the most transparent government ever in U.S. history. It was the least transparent government in history. And now, don't worry, when we look at these trade deals, we're going to be super duper, not just super transparent like the last administration. We're going to be super duper transparent. Oh, how'd that go? Hey, guy, how'd your first preliminary meeting? You didn't agree on anything. It was just a meeting. How'd that go? Can't talk about it. It's classified. Boy, this is transparency. This transparency thing's not looking too good all of a sudden. You had your first meeting in which nothing was agreed upon, and it's classified? We can't hear it and see it? Nope. Not unless you're one of the corporate lobbyists. You represent a firm? Actually, maybe I do. To sneak in and get some access. Who do you represent? Realist News. With a name like that, nice try. We're not letting you in, son. Get out of here. All right. I'm out.